Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Holy FaceTime. I know this is Wednesday, but I'm going to be doing the reading from Tuesday for Septuagesima Tuesday, and it's following along the same lines of the Adam and Eve story, and the words of Dom Prosper are just so magnificent that it is worthy of reading this and contemplating on this, because it is just incredible. Let us get started. The serpent's promise had stifled in Eve's heart every sentiment of love for God that had created her and loaded her with blessings. She ambitions to be God like him. Her faith, too, is wavering. She is not sure what God may have deceived her by threatening her with death should she disobey his command. And flushed by pride, she looks up to the forbidden fruit, and it seems so good to eat, and it is fair to her eyes, so that her senses, too, conspire against God and against her own happiness. The sin is already committed in her heart, and it needs but a formal act to make it complete. She cares for nothing but herself. God is no more heeded than if he did not exist, and she stretches forth her daring hand, she plucks the fruit, and she puts it to her mouth and eats. God had said that if she broke his commandment, she should die. She has eaten, she has sinned, and yet she still lives as before. Her pride exults at this triumph, and convinced that she is too strong for God's anger to reach her, she resolves on making Adam a partner in her victory, and boldly she hands him the fruit, which she herself has just eaten from, without any evil coming to her. Whether it were that he was emboldened by the impunity of his wife's sin, or that from feeling of blind affection he wished to share the lot of her who was flesh of his flesh and bone of his bones. Our first father also forgets all he owes to his Creator, and as though there had been never aught of love between him and his God, he basely does as Eve suggests. He eats of the fruit, and by that act ruins himself and all his posterity. No sooner have they broken the tie which united them with God than they sink into themselves. As long as God dwells in the creature, whom he has raised to the supernatural state, his being is complete. But let the creature drive his God away from himself by sin, and he finds himself in a state worse than nothing, the state of evil. That soul which is at a moment before was so beautiful and pure is a hideous wreck. Thus it was for our first parents. They stand alone, creatures without God. An intolerable shame seizes them, and they thought to become gods, and they aspired as infinite being. See them now, sinners, the prey of concupiscence. Hitherto their innocence was their all-sufficient garb. The world was obedient to them. They knew not how to blush, and there was nothing to make them fear. But now they tremble at their nakedness, and must needs seek a place wherein to hide. The same self-love that had worked their ruin had made them forget the greatness and goodness of God, and despise his commandment. Now that they have committed the great sin, the same blindness prevents them from even thinking of confessing it, or asking the forgiveness of the master they have offended. A sullen fear possesses them. They cannot think of nothing but how and where to hide. Wow. So the deepness of these words touches the heart completely, how they become misled by the evil one to eat of the fruit, and then completely overwhelmed after it with fear of everything, seeing their nakedness and seeing how they've offended God. They want to hide. And this is continued on tomorrow, and or Wednesday. I'm gonna read that next, but I'll do it as a separate video, because I want to talk about a couple of things. First of all, a good holy priest friend of ours who has a blog on the Blessed Sacrament, and he just wrote a really beautiful statement of the Septuagesima week and how that it's been buried. That how important this was as a pre-Lenten initiative to help us rediscover ourselves or prepare ourselves into Lent slowly, right? And one of the main things was that there was to remove the Alleluia from the Mass, and because that is only until after Easter, right? They are risen. So, and he talks about this tradition that it was actually, they wrote Alleluia on a wooden plaque or a piece of paper or whatever, and they would actually dig dig a hole and bury it within until after Easter, where they would so it's just and it's a way too of entering into a burying of ourselves, right? We should bury our appetites, our senses and everything to prepare for Lent. We need to start now in contemplating. There was a beautiful burying our affections, our desires of the flesh, our concupiscence, right? And how that helps us prepare in this week to do that prior to starting Lent. So anyway, I'm going to post that link. I did yesterday post it as link, but I will post that link again, and I highly recommend that please read this article from this holy priest. It is just astounding, and just touches on why we need to hold fast to the traditions of the church. Traditions and the foundation of the church are so important, and I could go on and on and on and on about this, like the foundations of. Can you imagine a church without the Eucharist? Can you imagine the Catholic Church without the Eucharist? Can you imagine it without the stained glass windows and the statues and the murals, the paintings, everything that brings us into the contemplation of Christ's passion and death and resurrection? And I mean, the Eucharist is the source and summit of our faith, as John Paul II stated. If we had a church devoid of the Eucharist, there would be no continuous reparation to God, and therefore there would be no outpouring of graces on humanity. When that ceases to exist, the graces stop. Now this is, so it's important to hold on to our foundations of faith. And and I really want to get into the foundations of the Holy Face. The depth of the foundations of the Holy Face devotion is rooted in the Veronica veil. It's rooted in the Passion. And it's rooted in this compassionate nature of God giving himself, this great gift of himself in the Holy Face, imprinting it on the veil of Veronica. This great gift of compassion came to the world because one woman decided to compassion our God in the depths of his agony. She gave him and she wiped his face with the cloth, whether he wiped it himself, but she gave him the cloth to wipe his face. And out of love, out of the depths of his heart for her compassion, he gives us this great gift. And then he pours out on humanity these revelations to Sister Marie de Saint Pierre, and the prayers are centered and focused on us again, offering our Lord Jesus Christ in his passion to God the Father. The foundations are so important, and a lot of people out there with the Holy Face devotion just think it's all about the Holy Face, an image of the Holy Face, and that they can use whatever image they want. And it's not what our God desired. It's not what 6 months after Sister Marie de Saint Pierre's death, he lights up the Vatican with his Holy Face in this great miracle, right? And then proceeds after that to have these the devotion of this image spread all across Europe, where 6,000 documented miracles happened in the home of Leo de Pont, a layperson, because he venerated and loved and adored this image of our Lord Jesus Christ in his passion and said the prayers of reparation. So again, foundations are so important. If you take away the foundation, if you just say, oh, we'll just use this image or that image, I recognize that the Shroud of Turin is a great and holy image, and that there's secondary, the secondary revelations of Maria Purina about the Holy Face and spreading the Holy Face. I recognize that totally. But don't forget the foundation. The foundation is built on our Lord in his passion while he was still alive. So this is important, people. Holy Face devotees, it's important to know this and to make sure that when you're doing these devotions, if you use the veil of the Shroud of Turin, and make sure that people understand the foundations of this devotion. It is so imperative. If you lose sight of the foundation, our Lord tells us in the gospel, if your house is not built on a solid foundation, it'll just wash away. So when you take away the foundation of something, you take away its credibility and its understanding and its coherence. So I just had to get that off my chest, because I know there's a lot of controversy out there, and the devil wants to tempt us and divide us. He wants to bring us away from true reparation. He wants us, he wants us to this modernism of the church, and everything else. It's devoid of reparation. It focuses on the resurrection, and it forgets the foundations. The foundations is our Lord's sacrifice, which is so important. We cannot overlook that. Oh, anyway, I'm sorry for venting on you, but I really had to get this off my chest, because a lot of people really truly do not understand the Holy Face devotion and what it's all about. And you cannot remove or separate the work of reparation, which started with Sister Marie de St. Pierre, from this devotion. That is so important. Until next time, God bless you all. Blessed be his holy name, and blessed be his holy, adorable face. And I'll be starting that other video soon. God bless you all. Bye now.